I'm Dr. Laura Berman. This is Uncovered Radio and Too Risque for Radio, and I am joined. Yeah, you don't know.
I love that.
Do you not know that
Really?
that's the name of the podcast, Too Risque for Radio? Because we talk about things. First of all, I tend to go on and like to have these longer conversations, which they don't always let me do live on the air. And I also answer and talk about a lot of racier things that I haven't even made you talk about yet.
Oh my God.
On
There's going to be a hot tank with questions that you're going to make me go, yes, no, maybe, things, I don't know.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Top or bottom? I'm just kidding. Now you gave me an idea. All right. Well, what we're going to talk about first is your spiritual journey.
Well,
speaking of hot topics, but because a lot of people know you, they know you as a supermodel. They know you from your show, your television and your modeling jobs and even your television show that you've had in more recent years. But you also, over the past several years, have really gone on your own sort of spiritual journey that's resulted even in some of the work you do in the world. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it was, I think when I look back and start reflecting on the spiritual journey, it's funny, someone, after I was in India for some time, I went back into these talks in New Zealand, and they said, put their hand up and they said to me, so when did you become spiritual? And I took a deep breath because that was a beautiful question in a way that needs to be open and related because people,
it's not
there's
a
a
thing
market
you become.
for it out there right now too. So,
right, and it's,
and
a lot of people commoditize on that, but it's not something you become.
Never, and
it's
that's
something that you maybe step into.
There's always
awareness of.
Yeah, and I said, well, my answer was really we're all spiritual. We're born that way is my view.
Me too.
And I think that when I decided, nature was a huge part. And then there was my mother I was baptized in front of like 2,000 people. And, you name it. I've basically, Mormon church, Buddhist. Then I studied to understand more the law of nature. I went and studied with Laurie Cabot out of Salem, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And that was very cloak and dagger at the point because I was like, this is something really private. And yet I realized how much my inner being bloomed when I was with that environment because basically when you're that's when your body's on the right path is when you
it's
feel
the full
and people
body,
go, what have you been doing?
Yes.
And
it's the full body, yes. Always follow the full body, yes. But you know what I love, and you told me this once in an earlier conversation, that your mom, because she was kind of psychic and very spiritual, you went from the time you were little, there were all sorts of magical things and magical beliefs. So most kids, and I say this to parents and kids all the time, most kids were born, I believe as well, these very attuned spiritual beings. Absolutely. And it gets conditioned or convinced or
probably after 5.
Shamed out of us. Yeah. Sometimes, they say that kids can even remember their past lives until 3.
Well, and that's... This is,
but we tell them they're imagining it or like it's not true. Your mom didn't do that, which I think is cool.
No,
Mine did.
Yeah, she really embraced that, and she never judged. She was a very interesting. She was a very interesting mother because there was no.
That's unusual.
There was no judgment.
In a mother.
Yeah,
seriously,
it was. And then, from there I went, so every time I actually wrote about this on my Instagram, there's this ebbing and flowing that comes in with spirituality where it knocks on the door. Then you go, oh my God, I want to go and do this. And then there's this exploring that happens for a couple of years. And then you go back to, normal, or you marry into a certain religion. So it kind of ebbs and flows. And then basically what happened after Mum passed, I knew I carried through some of those traits, as does my sister, with certain spiritual ways. And when I was in India, those really started coming up. Nature started coming up because nature was a huge play in my spirituality. And then after that happened, I went back after I did my first teacher training in the Himalayas, I went back to LA for 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I was back on that plane to India.
Yeah, you were like, get me out of here.
And straight back into it. And then I had an amazing teacher, Anand, there. And I had some incredible, also Sadhguru I met 4 years prior, which there was a big knock on the door with that as far as.
Sadhguru's amazing. I heard him speak.
It started quickening the pace of all the spiritual jigsaw puzzle basically that was happening. And when I was doing Tura Beauty, go back to 4 years ago, I was sitting in the Dhyana Lingam in his ashram interviewing him for Tura Beauty for India. And all of a sudden I get the shoulder tap and I was like, oh, it must be one of the Mars. And I was like, oh, no. Anyway, cut a long story short, there was no one tapping me on the shoulder.
Ah!
And there was the footage to prove it. There was nobody.
And you were just ignoring them? Like someone's telling me to move on and I'm going to ignore them. Yeah.
So that was interesting. And
someone was tapping on my finger last night, just so you know. I woke up in the middle of the night and someone was like doing this to me. Yeah, and I woke up and no one was there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that energy around right now, which is funny. I felt, isn't it amazing?
Yeah. So anyway, that happened.
Yeah, that happened. And then I wanted to attach, but, I went in, after that I interviewed with Sadhguru and I said, well, I got a shoulder tap. What does that mean? And my immediate Western mind was, it has to mean something.
Yeah.
And he goes, it was your experience. And I said, no, but what does it mean? Right. And he goes, it was your experience. And then I started getting it. If I keep telling that story, and I tell it in a very short, quick length and, shortened version now, just because of the fact that it has that word experience at the end, is what, which is what is important, because there's nothing worse than someone sitting there telling you about a certain spiritual experience, and you're like, the impact and the beauty and the knowledge is so in that as soon as it's expressed, sometimes it loses its majestic, deep, meaningful qualities. And I say this because there's reverence to this and there's energetic beauty to this.
To the experience. And so what is your experience? Because I know you have, your mom had psychic gifts. You work a lot with the elements and with nature. But when you think about your work in service to the energy of the world or the world, what is it?
Prana,
life energy.
The bottom line for me, after going through all these processes, going, oh my God, there's got to be, this kriya, which is action, which is really making your body pumping in certain ways or your hands moving in certain ways. That's a kriya. There's a lot of action related to that. The prana is the breath, the pranayama, tuning into your breath and tuning into your life force. So when I started working in India with yoga, I realized that subtle body was so incredibly powerful. And with that, I love teaching pranayama because I read the Upanishads.
Is that what pranayama?
Pranayama's breath. Is
that like
breath.
The Kundalini breath or like breath
There's
work?
Attachments to names. It's air.
Yeah.
You're breathing it all the time. So, people go, oh, but, this is religious or this is, and I'm like, hang on a second.
It's an access point.
No, it's the only way we exist.
Yes, that's true.
So if we haven't got that tuned and accessing from the deep down in the diaphragm, then we're only half.
Yes.
If we're only breathing from here, which most
of us do. That is true.
Your access to your entire being, there's not full access.
Yeah.
So just to teach that, and then when you teach breath work, which is called the pranayama, people go, oh yeah, but there's this attached to yoga. There is no, if you want to go on that path, you can with the deities and that. And I love that. I love the ritual side of it.
But you don't have to.
But you don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I did my first breath work class probably a few months ago with, I think you're someone you know here, ironically, because I think you might live in the same neighborhoodish. But this woman, Emma Gray, who is an artist, and she runs the 5-car garage. Have you ever know? Anyway, that's a separate conversation. But she does breathwork classes, and so for the first time, I did it, and woo, it was intense. I mean, it's almost like being kind of like not high, but like you go somewhere else. You sort of
I think the access, but also to that. Just the subtle body of being able to sit and breathe normally is start from there.
Yeah,
because
that's a good place to
the
start.
high impact of going and doing full.
Yeah, it's
the
intense.
body needs to get trained for that, and we need. My way is my way or whatever way is to really fully understand the ebbing and flowing of the belly, the diaphragm, accessing
and to move
it up,
with
and
that.
understanding just simple breathing, the left and the right. You know, at some certain points, the left breathes in more, you know, in the left nostril than the right, and the right breathes in. Certain times they swap out. So now these sages, 5,000 years ago, studied the human body in this way because there wasn't the iPhone.
Right. And they had plenty of...
We know more about how to turn the volume up. Do we plug the phone in? Absolutely. Do we let it run out of battery? Man, we're fucking pissed if it does run out of battery. But are we determined to find that plug to make sure? Yes. What about self?
Right.
The self-study of even just spending 20 minutes a day breathing normally, not getting all bent out of shape with, you know, just simple breath allows an access point to fully feel the human being.
Yeah, and to really connect between
boring, but it's subtle experiences that you'll have within that are quite extraordinary, and the access to other information is really quite simple. And then, you know, slowly moving up and then there's a beautiful breath called the breath of light, which is a 7-part breath through the nose and done slowly.
Oh.
Because again,
so where can you teach do you teach online, or do you are you going to do a course?
I'm going to put up some videos very soon once which the website's actually just going through a whole thing, so I will be putting up some of those. And
you have your podcast, 1111, which is so great.
With Emma, she's just extraordinary.
Yes, you both are.
Wealth of information she has as well.
And that's a podcast really that I feel is for, you know,
like spiritual cowboys.
Yeah, well, no, that's right. You're seeking.
I don't know what the hell we're talking about.
I know, but that's the point. Yeah. That's your everyone. You're trying to learn just along with everyone else, and you have all these cool and interesting teachers and writers and healers talking. You know, I love and your energy together is great, but to me, it's a great access point for people who are trying to quote unquote find their path.
My biggest beauty secret is to remain in your innocence, because when you look at a child, there's this beautiful quality of unknown, of being able to listen. They'll watch a bug, they'll listen to their mum, they'll hold on to their mum's dressing gown if they feel. So to remain in that innocence as an adult and to listen, I don't know everything.
Right.
Sometimes
opening
shut
that
your
way.
mouth and listen to what someone else has to say, because you know, I will, every day I wake up, ego, ignorance. I know that sounds hard, but at the same time, I'm talking to myself right now. You don't know everything.
Right. That's something you need to remind yourself of.
And someone else could be that pivotal moment that allows you to step dharmically, purposefully into your path.
Yeah, you never know where that's going to come.
And it comes out of the most surprising. So
So speaking of the spiritual realm, we're talking to Rachel Hunter. We're on Uncovered Radio and To Escape for Radio. We've been talking about all sorts of things around spirituality, your journey. But I got to talk to you about feeling beautiful, being beautiful. I mean, I think we're all beautiful. I know I'm beautiful. Whatever. But you're a freaking supermodel, okay? And so, so I really have always been curious because I was not considered beautiful ever. Maybe by the people who love me and have dated me, I am. But I was never growing up identified. My sister was actually, but I was never the pretty one. And I've never really experienced myself that way. And I've always been really curious. People like you who, obviously you're much more than your physical beauty, but have been lauded and built a whole portion of your career from that physical beauty. Was it something that you always felt and just kind of took for granted? Like, I'm beautiful and people just respond to me that way. Were you aware of yourself that way?
I was a ballerina. The things I loved was bug catchers because I used to be able to rescue bugs and let them go when they were well. As far as being beautiful, I was never wore dresses. Not until I was 15 when Mum said, you have to put a dress on to come out to dinner with us tonight. And I had, buck teeth and a gap in between them. So in my world, I wasn't. And I thought it was the biggest joke ever when a photographer said, I want to, take pictures. And I was like, yeah, whatever, weird. And then there was this big thing over me going up. It was how I saw it. It was just where I was meant to be. Now, during that time, there was certain, I guess, what was in.
Yeah.
That was in. Now, as much as sometimes our certain generation smashes social media, I love it because people can find their own person,
their own
and
beauty. Yeah.
And they can follow whether that is essence-wise, whether it's someone's way they think or whether it's someone's
or they have
butt
purple
or whether
hair
it's someone's
or whatever,
hair
yeah.
or whatever it is. It hasn't just it's
not
big
just
down.
one standard.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Like I said, we can read all the quotes in the world and we can now have this acceptance with beauty. But I think until, and I learned this a lot on Tour of Beauty.
That's your television show.
Which we go into 23 different countries and look at different cultures and well-being and gurus and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the biggest I learned was the synchronicity of that moment. And I'm sure we have at some point had this moment where both your spirit and your external beauty meet. And
for 5
there's
minutes
a
when I turned 32.
that happens. that happens. And then, you know what? Ego will absolutely shred you to pieces.
Is it? Is it hard, like aging? You still look like a supermodel, but I can imagine for you, like for the person who's aging.
But this is a conditioned
Do you work
problem.
Against it, though? Are you able to work against the conditioning?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's a choice, of fundamentally, that's where I'm at. Like as far as sitting, in the foothills of the Himalayas, chanting, doing mantras, doing havans, doing all these things. This is a choice. Right. Now, I fully feel me.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing more radiant than somebody who...
than being in your genius. Yeah.
Like, is really a mascara really going to make you happy? Is anything external actually going to happy? It's the play on the inside that comes out that actually fully makes you
and that's
happy.
What I always say is that you'll see these women that don't necessarily match the supermodel, and they have people like falling at their feet. They're being lauded as so sexy and gorgeous, and it is because of their inner confidence and light and their clarity, like moving from that in the world. So I absolutely believe that it keeps you young.
and easier said than done. And in Korea we met a young woman who was not very happy with her external looks, and that was really amazing, because I actually came out of there going, who am I to say whether someone can't fix their nose or do this or do that? I've come into this business where I was put on the cover of Vogue or this or Harper's Bazaar. So if somebody...
Did people tell you things to fix and stuff? Like, because I've heard that from models before too, that like they seem to us to have the perfect body, but they were told that their nose was too short or their something had to be fixed, even as beautiful as they seem to us.
Yeah, I don't know. I really didn't care what anybody said about that.
Like, you just came in into your tomboy self, and
it was the timing was
crazy.
Right. But it was. It's really going on that journey of growth and not over analyzing too much. Get out of your head, get out of your way, and wake up and step into whatever it is, like dharmically, that you want to fully be, and you will leave your mark. And there was an interesting thing at the beginning of the year, that you kind of marry your soul intention to your heart. And I did this, and it was really interesting, because I really was like, let me see how this navigates in my body during a meditation, because I love, I see my body now as more of an interesting
like an
experiment,
instrument.
To see what is happening, rather than getting a car. I tend to go, right, I'm going to go sit in the quiet at night and see what happens. So I really envisaged who I really like, my soul, like the abundance, the infinite, the capabilities. Just there's no male, female, there's no separate, there's everything. And then really putting it into meditating it to the heart. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting how separate and how abundant, and there was no borders, there was no energetic fracturing kind of with the soul. But the heart was really buffering.
Yes.
And it was really beautiful to see this friction kind of happening in this merge, which they're still trying to merge, clearly.
Right. Well, it's really about worth.
Yeah.
It's about feeling worthy enough in the heart, in the human self, in our sense of worth to allow those gifts fully integrated, right? And
but
fully
it was
expressed.
Kind of a fun meditation to do too.
Yeah.
And there was this really, again, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh my God, it was so beautiful to see the marriage between the heart and the soul. Look, that'll be great. But I think once that happens, I'm probably not going to be here when there's that marriage, because you'll be levitating in some place. But the beauty of it was to watch the electricity and the friction happen.
So what was the meditation? You want to take it? Did you just make it up?
I just made it up. I was like, let me see, because there's this beautiful intention that happens at the beginning of each year in India, and it is about kind of seeing that, like fully moving into a dharmic, way.
And by dharma, you mean your purpose, your soul's purpose for being, which is really, I always tell people, the way to find your soul's purpose is just like whatever you would do for free. Whatever you most love, whatever thing you think is like stupid because it's so easy for you and so fun, you think it's no effort, like that's part of your dharma, you would call it, or your purpose. But when you're in that, in the biggest, most abundant way, and allowing that into your heart as something you can have.
And it was really looking, and not saying separate, because at first it was separate for me. Now this is my experience, but really placing soul, like really seeing the abundance of who I want to be, and why do I feel scared to do that, and why am I in my way, why don't I trust, why don't I, and really, so the heart was thinking, the mind was thinking all that, but yet over here there was just like, but you can do it,
it's all there,
the butterflies and seeing those two friction. So,
well, I think that should be a video you make too, as well, a guided meditation for us on marrying the soul and the heart's intention.
I mean, I thought, what do you mean? They're not separate? And then I was like, oh, shit. That's
Maybe
separate.
They are. Got to try that stuff on.
In my experience.
Well, no, I think they are for all of us, that there's a point of intersection between what we most desire and what we think we can have. right?
Yeah.
But
and what
that's
society,
really,
what will they think of us?
yes.
And, oh my God, somebody will think
and
that
that's
I'm...
really any emotional pain you're in. And this is something that Abraham Hicks teach this, but that any tension or pain you're in is directly related to the distance between what your heart's desiring and what you think is possible. And the wider that distance, the more pain you're in emotionally or literally.
So,
isn't that interesting? I mean, I think that's a really good litmus.
yeah.
Right? And that's what you're trying to do is to marry the two where the heart knows that, yes, it is possible.
Yeah.
And the closer you can get to that possibility, the more you light up. And the more you light up, the more you change your frequency and the more of those things come in. It's all energy. It's what I'm always telling you.
And that's the prana.
Yeah.
And to really... just with the access of breath, really acknowledging breath, and in the Upanishads, which is a very old book, so over 5,000 years old, and in there the senses were having all these fights, and then breath goes, well, I'll just basically leave. And they all freaked out because how were you going to see? How were you going to listen? How were you going to breathe? How were you going to do anything without breath? So my biggest part would be to lay down on your back, feel your abdomen, feel your diaphragm, and just gently breathe, because it does confuse going from the upper chest
to
really
breathe into the belly here,
And it is very, very. It takes the body does it take time to adjust. So this is an incredibly intricate, beautiful.
The
spiritual machine we have, and be gentle with it, because it's like telling someone in some practices to go on a 25K marathon when you haven't even run down the block.
Right.
So
you have
just
to
take
build
a jog
up
down
to
the
it.
block first,
or just practice what I started doing was just the count of 10 and the count out when I'm falling asleep at night. Count of 10 in, count of 10 out, or the 7, 8, 9, which I've taught them before, where you breathe in for 7, hold for 8, breathe out for 9. But as you start to do that, you'll feel your whole nervous system calm down. It's a great place to kind of tune in.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, well, we're going to tune into your podcast, first of all, 1111. They can find that on iTunes, right?
Yeah.
And RachelHunter.com to find out about the Tour of Beauty, your show, and everything
or
else
Rachel
you have
Hunter
to...
X. I couldn't really get Rachel Hunter. That's on Instagram too. But you'll see it
sounds like X-rated, Rachel.
I know. I'm sure there is that too. Somewhere.
Really? Well, that's a conversation for another time, Rachel Hunter. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, you can call anytime at 855-5-UNCOVER on Uncovered Radio and Too Risque for Radio.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.